I want you all to imagine a time where the highest grossing film of the year is a gloomy art house drama that's not so much a love story as a tale of despairing passion substituting for comfort. The time is 1932, and that film is Shanghai Express.
You're in China now, sir, where time and life have no value.
I know I'm in China.
It's a bleak drama about Chinese revolutionaries taking hostages aboard a passenger train, or as Precode.com puts it, a Faustian tale of passion where every clasp of a hand to another's shoulder has the unmissable stench of desperation. It's a dispatch from a world gone mad. If you think this ugly world is bad, remember, back then, this was escapism. Shanghai Express is a time capsule of the early 1930s, depicting a world that was suffering through the Great Depression and struggling to put itself back together. Characters are either cynical, hopeless, heartbroken, or some combination of all three. Villains do horrible things without holding back because they have accepted that death will come soon.
The Chinese government would have had my head long ago if it hadn't been such a good head.
Lovers choose to pass on happiness, convinced it won't last.
It was difficult to find someone to take your place.
Did you try very hard?
Not particularly. I didn't want to be hurt again.
People treat near-death situations casually, placing bets on how long it'll take for them to survive.
I'll give anybody 10 to 1 we don't get out of here alive.
Because they know that surviving in the outside world, that's the real horror. The film is such a product of its time that it's almost inaccessible to a modern audience.
What future is there being a Chinaman? You're born, eat your way through a handful of rice, and you die. What a country. Let's have a drink.
The fact that this film can be so bleak and layered is probably because it's from the pre-code era. To keep this video short, I'll do like a rough summary of what that actually is. These days we have the rating system to determine what's appropriate for younger viewers to see. You know, we have G, PG, or over here we have a 12, over there you might have a PG-13. We didn't always have this, and instead we had the Hays Code, which was the original censorship. But it wasn't always strictly enforced. So from about 1928 until 1934, films could be much more liberal with what they could show.
May I suggest, however, a slight delay in your customary procedure?
You have further need of him?
It wasn't until 1934 that the Hays Code really cracked down on what you could and couldn't see, so there is usually a huge difference between a film released in 1933 and one released in 1934. And Shanghai Express was a 1932 production. Shanghai Express marks itself as a pre-code film by how it treats its characters that are involved in less than honourable practices. And that includes what the female leads do for a living.
One of them is yellow and the other one is white, but both their souls are rotten.
First we have Shanghai Lily, formerly known as Madeline, played by Marlene Dietrich.
What kind of a house did you say?
A boarding house.
Oh.
And then we have Hu Fei, played by Anna May Wong.
I must confess I don't quite know the standard of respectability that you demand in your boarding house, Mrs. Haggerty.
It's as open as it's allowed to be about how they make their money.
It took more than one man to change my name to Shanghai Lily.
Madeline's backstory is that she was previously in love with Dr. Donald Harvey, played by Clive Brook.
You left me without a word, purely because I indulged in a woman's trick to make you jealous.
He dumped her, so she was forced to become a prostitute to survive. They don't see each other again until they meet on the train.
Madeline.
Well, Doctor, I haven't seen you in a long time.
If the film takes place in the same year it was released, Donald and Lily's 5-year separation happened in 1928, right before the Wall Street crash. So it's pretty obvious that Lily became a prostitute because she had to make ends meet somehow.
We parted, and I threw my life away, because I didn't care to bargain for love with words.
What's interesting here is how Donald looks down on her for this, and it's treated as a bad thing.
You're very cruel, Doc.
I reserve the privilege of choosing my friends.
The movie takes the side of the woman using her sexuality to make a living. Characters who look down on Shanghai Lily for being a prostitute are shown to either be idiots or they need to learn the error of their ways.
Why, she's the most terrible woman I've ever met. I don't see how she can look any of us in the eye.
Look here, Mrs. Haggerty, I think you're doing the woman an injustice.
Donald's arc in the film is learning to trust Lily and forgive her for what she's had to do to survive.
Well, sir, did you find out what kind of a woman she is?
I found out enough to realize that she's worth a dozen of you.
And this is a role that really only Marlene Dietrich could play.
I haven't changed since then, and neither has he.
She was famous for her casual attitude towards sex. Ever since her breakout role in The Blue Angel, she had this image of the wholesome seductress, the femme fatale with a heart, the ethical slut. There were even rumours that she was doing it with Anna May Wong, but there's no real evidence for this. The characters, on the other hand...
Don't do anything foolish.
Rather than being slut-shamed, her characters were usually shown as liberated because of their sexuality. And Shanghai Express is the same.
Don't you find respectable people terribly dull?
To her, sex is just a tool, one that can be used for good or evil. There's talk of one character who had to go into therapy because he spent all his money on her.
Sir, that's Shanghai Lily. For the last fortnight I've been attending a man who went out of his mind after spending every penny on her.
Convinced it was love when he was really just paying for a service. Lily gave up on love a long time ago when Donald left her, and these days sex is just a means to an end.
I'll get more. I'll earn more, somehow. It'll be enough. Please let him go.
It would be all too easy for the movie to show this as a negative character trait, but a recurring theme in Shanghai Express is the nature of duality. Characters appear to be one thing, but they're really another. This is shown in how Chang is revealed to be a misogynistic villain.
What do you want?
It's a long journey.
Sam Salt flaunts his wealth, but it turns out the diamonds he wears are fake.
These are phony, too. The real ones are in the safe in Shanghai.
Eric Baum poses as a respectable coal salesman, but he's revealed to be an opium dealer.
And have shipped 12,000 pounds of it into China in the last year.
Oh, you are wrong.
And Hu Fei seems like a passive, delicate flower, but reveals that she's nothing of the sort. Shanghai Lily pretends not to care for love at all, but when it comes down to it, she can't help but care a great deal.
He means everything in the world to me. I love him. Since you want to know, I love him madly.
The characters who write her off as just a whore are shown to be ignorant and stupid.
That those two women are riding this train in search of victims.
Obsession with respectability, wholesomeness, and all that sort of thing is shown to be a shallow character trait. Take Mrs. Haggerty, whose obsession with respectability is used to show her as pompous and old-fashioned.
You're joking, aren't you? I've only known the most respectable people. You see, I keep a boarding house.
Mrs. Haggerty's values come from a time that doesn't really exist anymore. These characters can't afford respectability. A woman like her is to be laughed at.
I beg your pardon?
I beg yours.
Dr. Carmichael tries to paint the two of them as predators, but the movie shows them as women who are just doing what they need to get by.
Being a physician, I sometimes wonder how a man like you can locate a soul and, having located it, diagnose its condition as rotten.
You could argue that Dr. Carmichael is the character that grows the most in the movie, alongside Donald and Lily. At the start of the movie, he's protesting against them even being on the train.
And that's not all I know. She's wrecked a dozen men up and down the China
Look here, sir, you're mistaken. She's a friend of mine.
Well, sir, if I were in your boots, I wouldn't brag about it.
At the end, he's telling Donald he'd be mad to let her go.
There's no restriction to my saying that you're a profound fool.
He essentially has to learn the lesson that whores can have souls too.
You're right. Love without faith, like religion without faith, doesn't amount to very much.
Shanghai Express is far from the only pre-code film to have such liberal views on sexuality. Babyface, starring Barbara Stanwyck, is pretty much about a woman who uses sex to get ahead in her career. Waterloo Bridge is a British film about a sympathetic prostitute. Red Dust has an adulterous love triangle, with Mary Astor as a married woman and Jean Harlow as yet another sympathetic working girl. But by 1934, the Hays Code was really cracking down on this kind of thing. One of the criteria in the code was that the values of marriage and the home had to be upheld. This really affected the ending of Casablanca, where Rick and Ilsa couldn't end up together because that would involve Ilsa leaving her husband.
But what about us?
We'll always have Paris.
Similar is now Voyager, which caused a bit of a shock at making the male lead a sympathetic adulterer with an abusive wife. And this prevented him from ending up with the heroine.
Oh, Jerry, don't let's ask for the moon. We have the stars.
We tend to think of the sexual revolution as happening only in the 60s, but it was happening as far back as the 1920s. Shanghai Express and other pre-code films were making positive statements about sexuality in the 1930s. The film is also notable for inverting the damsel in distress trope. In the third act of the film, Donald is taken as a hostage by Chang, and he risks being blinded.
If you wait here a few minutes, you can lead him back to the train blind.
You're insane. He's a British officer. The Chinese government will have your head for it.
And Lily is the only one who can save him.
You made me an offer to leave with you. Does it still hold good?
The only way she can do so is by offering herself to Chang to be his mistress.
I had no other choice.
Does Captain Harvey know that?
Does he act as if he did?
He certainly does not.
So that's actually a pretty positive statement about feminism and sexuality in the 1930s. But Shanghai Express was also making positive statements about something else. Pretty much the only reason I know about this film is from reading about the career of Anime Wong. She was third-generation Chinese, born in California, and she eventually became the first ever Chinese-American movie star. She worked as an extra for a few years before getting her breakout roles in The Toll of the Sea and The Thief of Baghdad, the original. She was the hot new thing for the public to get excited about, because while she was definitely Chinese, she was pretty westernized. 90% of magazine articles focused on this aspect. She became a quick star, and the hype surrounding her would have made her an A-lister if it weren't for one thing. Another of the Hays Code's nasty little practices was that it forbade any kind of interracial relations on the big screen, so Anime could not play the leading lady to a white man. This led to her getting stuck in a series of stereotypical roles where she was either exotic window dressing or played the evil dragon lady. Chinese audiences hated her for playing these stereotypical roles, but she had limited options because of the studio's racism. She had the talent and the popularity to be more than that, but she was constantly reminded of her place.
It's of no consequence. I didn't do it for you.
Shanghai Express featured the rare thing known as a non-stereotypical Anime Wong role, and even to get this film she had to still play a dragon lady in the Fu Manchu film Daughter of the Dragon. The role of Hu Fei is said to be one of the earliest examples of the ethnic best friend trope.
Miss Hu Fei.
She's introduced as Shanghai Lily's travelling companion, gets little to no backstory of her own, and she's the only non-white member of the cast.
You look more like a white man to me.
That includes you, Warner Oland, but Hu Fei is clearly a protagonist, gets a lot of screen time, and Anime Wong does a lot with the part.
Death cancel is dead to me.
She gets little dialogue, but she doesn't need it. And there are times where I'm way more interested in her than in Marlene Dietrich.
When are we leaving?
And Hu Fei subverts a lot of the traditional Asian woman stereotypes. She's shown as highly intelligent and bilingual, often translating for the other characters.
What did he say?
He said we ought to go back to the train and stay there.
She's unfazed by the condescending attitudes of everyone around her. She's not submissive at all. Her big moment in the plot comes when Chang rapes her, and she gets her revenge by stabbing him in the back and saving the day for everyone.
You better get her out of there. I've just killed Chang.
This part of the film is pretty impressive for me. Chang rapes Hu Fei because he first wanted Shanghai Lily, but Donald is having none of that. Chang knows he literally can't have Lily without Donald stopping him.
Don't touch me.
And he needs Donald as a hostage. The movie literally shows the villain being annoyed that he can't have a white woman, so he takes an Asian woman as the next best thing. The movie spells it out that this is a very bad thing, since Lily even gets down on her knees in praise after this happens. It's showing that an Asian woman being degraded and treated as less than second class is one of the worst things that can happen in this movie, and it's paralleled with the torture of an innocent German man. Don't forget that this same year saw The Mask of Fu Manchu coming out.
Then conquer and breed! Kill the white man and take his women!
America was very much in the middle of the Yellow Peril period, and Shanghai Express making these statements about race was the exception rather than the rule.
Oh, yes, very sure.
And it's not just used for shock value. Hu Fei gets revenge on Chang for degrading her like that. She refuses to be a victim, and it's this that saves the day. The protagonists are not saved by the strapping white British soldier, but by the Chinese call girl that they all look down on. That's almost radical for 1930s Hollywood. And it almost adds more for the evil Asian character to be played by a white actor in yellowface, and then he gets dispatched by a heroic Asian played by an actual Chinese actress. The fact that Anime Wong was Chinese-American playing a Chinese character in a film in the 1930s is radical in and of itself. Remember that we did not get an all-Asian cast until 1961 with Flower Drum Song. Anime was sadly not launched onto anything major afterwards, and she continued to lose out on good roles in favour of white actresses wearing yellowface. There are only a handful of non-stereotypical roles that she played, and Shanghai Express is probably the most memorable of them.
If he's up there, he may never come down.
Again, it's incredible to think that Shanghai Express was the highest grossing film of its year, even beating out the star-studded Grand Hotel.
Or is it Shanghai? Kill him with a knife, didn't you?
Precode.com says, it's a challenging but exciting film, one that both pushes and teases its audience while heaping upon them visual extravagance. Through Dietrich, it captures the last vestige of European mystique before Hitler's rise and the trudge of depression would erase them almost permanently. It won a well-deserved Oscar for its cinematography, and this image from the film was later used by Queen for the Bohemian Rhapsody music video. Marlene Dietrich collaborated with Josef von Sternberg about 7 times altogether, and Shanghai Express was their highest grossing film and probably considered to be their best.
Then we ought to see a lot of each other.
Although Anna May Wong had to take her career to Europe because Hollywood decided she was too Chinese, her role here played a big part in inspiring other Asian actors to get involved. Nancy Kwan, star of Flower Drum Song and The World of Susie Wong, said that she was really inspired by Anna May Wong and wished they could have worked together in Flower Drum Song. She was considered a spiritual successor to her.
Thank you very much.
To this day, Shanghai Express is the most memorable role she played.
It will be a great day for China when that price is paid.
There isn't much else to say about the film except that it exists. It isn't as remembered, but the amount of films that have felt its influence means that it really should be.
I'm weary of you now.
I had no reason to believe my invitation would give offense to Shanghai Lily.
Shanghai Lily has reformed.